as to what other people are doing and go back to kind of your roots of, you know, saying I'm
I mean,
drawing.
you can totally look at what other people are doing. Like
Back
it's a wrong approach to measure yourself by those people. Like you
Yeah.
should measure yourself by yourself. That's the only standard that exists. Like as soon as you try to make other people a benchmark for yourself, and you're fooling yourself and you're making it a competition, and it's not very healthy.
100%.
Let's see here. Going back to like 2003 real quick, I remember reading somewhere that was like actually when you first like came up with like the Degenesis IP, like with a buddy of yours, and then I read that like you had let it sit for almost like a decade and then just revisited it. Like, could you tell us like a little bit about like what that was like to find that people were still like into it and actually playing it and like?
Oh hell yeah! I mean, like when we did the original idea, we were two 24-year-old greenhorns that had no idea about polishing. Like we were a really shitty garage band with no idea of how to, you know, put out a book. It was like it came out of the need to do something. And since we weren't making a lot of money, we just felt like, okay, maybe if we write our own RPG, then we're gonna make some. and then we published it, and it was a mediocre success. Like we managed to live off of the profits for about a year. But then eventually, you know, like we had no plan B. Like nothing was established. We had no idea on how to license the thing. We didn't know what to do with it outside of, you know, the small German community that we made it for. And we kind of lost it there. And I think, you know, it meandered off into two different directions. Chris kept on, you know, writing for it for I think a year or two longer. And I was at that point already in the States, and I couldn't care less for it at that point because I really saw it as almost like as a failure, you know, like in a way, because we never had managed to actually do something with it. And 10 years later, it so happens that I just, you know, I was Googling the game and I checked out the old forums that we established, and there were still people playing it after 10 years, and people building cosplay costumes off of it, off of the original designs that I made. And I was overwhelmed from an emotional side. I felt like it was such a strong impression to see, you know, like all these people really being still invested in it. And I looked at the old stuff and I showed it around to a few guys in my studio, and they also really liked it. They felt like there was something really true about it. And then it was a really funny conversation I had with Dave, where he was urging me I should just bring it back. And I felt like, oh my God, like that idea crossed me so many times. And then I called my old partner Chris up and I was like, what if we just redo this? What if we just reboot it in a way where, you know, like now we're older, 10 years later, we have much more experience. We know things much better than we did it before. Do you want to do this? And he was cool with it. He felt like it's a good idea. And then we just started working right away. I felt like there was something that needed to get out of my system. Yeah, it was great. It was great to reboot it. It was great to revisit it. And I think it's great to keep on working on it. We just published a third book.
Since, I guess that was an expansion, like the Killing.
Yeah. And so, you know, it keeps me occupied. It gives me something to do in my free time. And I like, and this is what I said earlier, I feel like I have a lot of unfinished business, a lot of old ideas that have never been brought to completion, and a lot of stuff that is rotting in my drawer that I want to just keep on bringing back. I just want to use the next decade or so to just, you know, put out things that I dreamed about when I was younger and I never had the chance to put out. And the Genesis is just, you know, that was the first launch project, but there's a lot more lying there, just waits for me to be, you know, taken out and worked on.
Actually, this is a good question that kind of corresponds with that from Incognite. He said, I've been working on my own IP for a while, and I was wondering, in a case of world building, what is for you the best place to start? Like, where did you, I don't know, pick up with the Genesis and say, okay, here's a really good starting point. Let's spiral outward from here.
Well, Well, I mean, the best stories are the ones that you can summarize in a couple of sentences. The Genesis is about God falls on the planet, realizes, you know, mankind has been fucking around with Garden Eden, and has to reset it. There you go, and that's the whole plot of the Genesis described in a nutshell. And then you start like meandering from there, and you define your protagonists, and you define your conflict, and you define, you know, like the intricacies of the world, and you just meander into different directions. But obviously, I mean, like there's a lot of ways to go about it. Like, do you want to, like, you have to decide what kind of story it's supposed to be, who's the person you're witnessing that story through. An RPG is an incredibly wide and open terrain for an IP builder to start off with, you know, because you're like looking at the entire spectrum of everything that's happening from a very wide angle. And sometimes it's much easier to just go into character level and develop a character whose eyes are basically the eyes into that world, and everything that we experience is through that person's eyes. And then you have a much more narrow view, and you don't need to figure out as much as we had to figure out with Genesis, which is like a 700-page quarter pounder with cheese that nobody wants to read. It's so massive. So like that's like working your way through a telephone book. Nobody needs that, you know, like it's highly inaccessible. Sometimes it's much easier to go with a simple story and just explain it through the eyes of the character. Develop the world on the fly as if you're witnessing everything that very moment through the character's eyes, and it's a much easier route. But like everybody has to figure that out for themselves. The most important part is like keep it simple, and just start being complicated. Once the story really works in a simple fashion in a few sentences, then you can start meandering around and like build like all these sideways to it, and but never fluctuate away from what the core story is. Because if you look at like all the big IPs that are out there, they have a very strong core story that can be told in just a few sentences.
Yeah, I was about to mention that. Like any of some of the best movies or video games or anything like that, you know, it's like if it has a thematic or an idea, it's always condensed in like a couple sentences.
Yeah.
You know, then from there, it's built outward. So it gives you like an immediate directive, and to say, okay, now I can explore basically what rotates.
And besides that, I mean, like one of the main factors is actually to keep the motivation up and to actually keep on working on it. Like I really think discipline is a far bigger factor than anything else. Like imagination, everybody has imagination. Imagination comes in, you know, plenty of different ways. People have ideas all the time, but like most of the time they just have the idea. They don't have the willpower to sit down and actually work it out. And I think willpower and disciplines are just like major factors to getting something done. What is highly annoying is that people will tell you about an idea that they had, and the moment they tell you about it, they've already talked themselves out of the idea, and they're never going to pick it up. Like how many times I remember have I heard people walking into my office or meeting them at conventions, and they're like, I want to do this IP.
Yeah.
What keeps you from it? Like, why don't you do it? Like, well, like you just told me your idea, but like, well, do you need me to pay you for it to do it, or what kind of incentive do you need to get started? And that is a highly problematic situation, because most people don't develop the motivation that it takes to be disciplined about it. And I understand why, because everything in life is pretty hard, especially when you have to repeat it over and over again. If you wanna be a fucking superstar bodybuilder, or you know, an ultimate fighter, you're not gonna do that in a night or in a week or in a couple of months. You just have to put a lot of work in there, and to be able to put a lot of work in that, you need to keep on motivating yourself over and over again. So you need to build incentives for yourself, and the best is to have milestones. You know, like for example, when I was working on the Genesis, I knew the project is so vast and will take 2 years to complete. So before I even started painting a single image, I tried to sketch it all out at least. So I would see the whole project in a very rough stage, where I knew, okay, this is not going to take me that long. I can sketch it all out in probably a month and a half, and then I have like 2 years of rendering in front of me that I need to go through. But at least, you know, you have like the great, the greater picture, the bigger picture right in front of you, and then you just keep on working it off in small batches, and you gratify yourself for every small batch that you achieve to, you know, keep, or every milestone you keep for yourself. And
yeah. That's a much, I think that's a much
then like the development process kind of becomes like the incentive as you're building it, and
yeah.
that actually leads into a good question from one of the viewers. Joseph Weston asked, Dave Raposa talks about you having like a crazy work ethic. How many hours a day are you drawing and working on these projects, would you say?
I mean, like, it's not, I mean, my work ethic is crazy because I have to do a lot of different things during the day. So like, since I run the studio, I do a lot of managerial tasks that have nothing to do with art. So I write emails, I do payroll, I make sure our bookkeeping is up to date. I do interviews with artists and interns. I help out on the customer service. There's a million tasks in a day that I have to do that have nothing to do with art. And then besides that, I'm also trying to be a halfway good boss and have an open ear for anybody who wants to talk, or anybody who wants, you know, some advice. So the first 6 hours of the day just go into that, and then by around 6 o'clock, when people start leaving the office, this is where I get into my creative zone, and then I just simply keep working till midnight, sometimes till 1 o'clock, and then I go home. And then for me, like the most sacred things are weekends, because on weekends I don't have to solve anyone's problem. Nobody calls me. I don't get emails. Nobody gives a fuck about me existing. And then I come into the office and I just get like insane amounts of work done, because I just can pull a 16-hour shift of just drawing. And that's the best part. Or sometimes I come in on the weekend and I just do 2 days of writing, and I get like 20 pages done in a single sitting, and then I'm super happy, because I feel like my weekly milestone is done, and I can go back to the grinder and just do different things. But I was talking about this to you, Travis, before we went live. It's almost like you're torturing yourself, so you crave the act of art so much that once you get to do art, you're like, you don't want to stop doing it. Just keep on crushing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think you addressed like a lot of really good points, and the idea of keeping your motivation up and not talking about your projects and all that whatnot. That was something that I've realized more lately, is that like it's like you said, when people talk about the idea of trying to go in and do a project or whatever, and they explain it to you, it's like they all of a sudden they ride the hype of it in their head, and then they talk themselves out of it. So it's like, oh, you just got the instant gratification of that, rather than just, if you sit down and you do something, rather than talk about it, you're going to get a lot more done. And also with the scheduling, avoid social media. Just set Facebook.
I don't mind it. Like I just don't participate in it. Like there's times when you go online and you celebrate that.
Just set Facebook. Yeah, for sure. I mean, there was like one thing I saw on Dave's schedule that I used to look at way back when, was like he wouldn't look at email or his phone, for a certain amount. That's more what I was saying, where it was like, if you're trying to really work hard towards something, try to limit your distractions.
Mm-hmm.
That way, I'm sure you're probably like a master at it, being like, heading a studio and having to, deal with,
Well, I close the door.
Yeah, close the door. We had a really good, interesting question about like character design, because like one of the things you're most well known for is like just the amount of designs that you can put out in terms of like costumes. And I think you kind of answered this earlier by just drawing like characters from the pen and paper role play games and stuff like that, probably like the experience through that. But it said, how do you generate, like, what are the things you think of when you're designing characters? Like
I mean, my library of inspiration is super vast. I do take inspiration from all kinds of areas, be it historical, be it, modern, be it, futuristic. I do like all kinds of things. I'm not defined to a certain style or a certain taste. There's a base realism to it, but it's not like completely set in stone. I make shit up all the time. I do feel like I need to take certain liberties sometimes. But besides that, like, it's really just a vast inspiration in life, because where else are you going to take your inspiration from life? Everything is already out there. Everything has already been invented. Everything has already been created in a way. Like, you just need to rearrange those ideas and just make something new out of it. That's the main secret sauce and the main secret ingredient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. Sure.
I'm kind of curious about whenever you first decided, like, sat down and decided, like, okay, I want to open my own studio and pursue my own IPs. Could you tell us a little bit about like what the struggles were of like establishing that, and like what the process was of kind of actually like bringing that to fruition?
Yeah, I mean, like, I did have a really functional Marvel career, and there was no reason for me to leave that career, but I felt I was trapped in that career. I felt like I was working as a freelancer from home. Things were going really well for me. I had fantastic editors who took care of me. I had, lots of invitation to travel all over the world, see all kinds of different things, and shake hands with all kinds of different people. But there was not a satisfaction of feeling like I'm out in the dark ocean and I need to learn how to swim. Things were too easy. I would wake up in the morning, I would do a bunch of sketches, I would send them off to my editor, I would get instant approval, I would start painting them, and then I would get applause and money. And that felt like a very boring and incredibly spectacular life. And it felt like something that I needed to break out of, because I felt like I was getting lazier and lazier with my ideas, lazier and lazier with my execution, lazier and lazier with my approach to work. And instead of challenging myself and growing as an artist, I felt like I was degenerating as an artist and not making any proper progress. So I felt like, what is that? Sorry?
I thought Cole said something, but I don't.
Yeah, I was just saying, like, it was kind of just like too safe of an environment where you got too comfortable, too complacent.
Yeah, and I knew from my Massive Black days at the time that I grew the most as an artist was during the chance that I had to work in a studio with other artists. So I really felt that was the next step for me. I wanted to bring a studio of badass artists together and find the right people to jam and jive with and create good things together, because that was one of the most inspirational parts of my early career, and I felt like I wanted to have that throughout my 30s as well. And that was the initial primer of the whole situation. And then, like, years go by, and you have to put your team together. You have to find the right people with the right mindset to follow you on this journey, because not everybody is willing to go that route, and everybody's interested in that route. And some people are more interested in working in a big company or in a big studio, and working on franchises and not necessarily on new ideas. And 7 years in, like, I think we've kind of brought a very good team together at this point that can do a lot of things, and has a broad range of professional expertises. And I mean, I always look up to the people who went all the way with me. Like, there's a few guys that stayed over the years, are still part of this group from the very beginning. Like, for example, our very first intern, who's now a senior, MJ Machos. She's an incredible guy. He's been there from the very start, and he went through all the different steps of starting out as a classic intern and then taking a chance and really starting to learn, and then being hired on as a junior and growing into a junior position, and so forth and so forth. So it's a very exciting story, and something that I look back to with a very fond heart.
How many people did you have when you very first began? Like, was it, I mean, did you start out with, I assume you didn't start out with 20.
No, we started out with 3, and then it was 4, and then it's 5, and then it's 6, and
Slow
7,
build.
9, and then it's 14 at once, and then it falls back to 10, and, you know, and then you grow a little bit more, then you resize, rearrange, and so forth. I mean, like, there's so many
back and forth.
I mean, we're talking about 7 years at this point. Like, a lot of things happen in 7 years.
Oh, for sure. So, like, you know, now where your studio is kind of like, you know, become, you know, very well established with like outsourcing, and you've got like a couple IPs. Like, what is your next step forward with that? Like, is it just, you know, besides, you know, the outsource work, like, are you going to push forward with the IPs even more? I know you have your Orkin project coming up.
Yeah, I mean, that's the next big thing. That's something that I need to solve. It's still a mountain of work, but like I feel like I'm coming closer to finishing line. That's why I felt so comfortable in showcasing the project, because I know I can get it done. It's not, I mean, like, I'm 50% done at this point, so it's a good point in time to share it and like start getting people excited about it. But yeah, this is the next big thing, and potentially I mean, I hope I can get into a rhythm where every 2 years, or maybe even shorter, every 18 months or so, I can present a new thing that is completely different than the last one. I mean, that is my biggest hope. Like, I really want to juggle the things that I have lying around, and try completely different genres, completely different topics, completely different media, and really see how far I can stretch my own creativity by just, you know, being experimental.
Yeah, that's a good way to keep it fresh and kind of keep you motivated as well. Like, oh, that's you want to tell people a little bit about your Orkin project? I don't really know much about it, to be honest.
We haven't really said anything about it.
Oh, okay, all right.
So it's in a very secret stage right now.
Oh, okay, I got you.
No, I mean, like, it's
any pressure.
It's obviously, it's not an RPG at this point. It's a big storybook. It's full of world building. It's like a lot of really informative background information. We came up with a really nice story that we think is worth telling, that we think is relevant, and that we want to explore in a very unique fashion. So it's several books at this point, and they're all interlinked with each other. So to get the whole story, you need to read all books, and that's the exciting part about it. And then hopefully, if we get everything done and right, then there will be also some audio to accompany that. And it's a very exciting thing. I'm very proud of this project, because it's a completely different approach than the Genesis, and I really felt like I needed something that is, you know, easier to grasp and easier to understand for an outside audience.
It's a nice shift.
The Genesis is super rich and very convoluted, very thick, and it's like if you enter that world, it's like almost like you have to leave your soul at the door if you want to understand it. And Orkin has a completely different mindset in terms of development. I just want to get the layers of thickness, spread them apart, and, you know, like, really show a concise story that can be witnessed through the eyes of several protagonists, actually, but that will open up like a larger window into the world at a later point in time.
No, that's interesting. I mean, I like a lot of the design work that I saw for it. It looks like a very different, like, you know, genre shift, like you said, from a Genesis, and even like what I would normally expect from something like titles Orkin. So the first thing I thought of was Orcs. I was like, this isn't what I would have expected, but it had like a lot of really cool, you know, inspiration in there.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I'm really shooting for something fresh and and inspired here. And I really hope it will live up to what I'm promising right now.
I actually have a community question about the Orkin too. Joseph Weston was wanting to know, like, what were you thinking about when designing the orcs for Orkins? Because it seems like the human faction is like hyper order and sort of authoritarian. Are the orcs like a response to that?
Well, my very first thought is, or was, is just a simple question: how can I make orcs sexy and appealing to a mature audience that doesn't look at them as, you know, pig people with tusks? So that was the very first question, and I think as a conceptual artist, you know, like I really need to figure out how to make shit look cool, and certain things inspire me a lot, especially when they have been perceived or created in a certain way for a very long period of time. Orcs have always been created as this rather immature, brutish, you know, childhood fantasy of a raging Hulk with wild hair. And so, how do you bring that to a level of sexy? How do you make that interesting? How do you tell a different story with the material that you have? How do you change the perception towards that particular, you know, tribe or race or fantasy people that has been so established in fantasy and pop culture for such a long period of time, and you just spin a different story out of it. And it's not about reinventing the wheel, it's actually about rethinking the wheel, you know, just rethinking the entire process of it, and then starting to create something new out of that. There's, you know, you got to limit yourself from the very beginning and just say you work with a very shallow or very, very small framework, and within that framework you don't have a lot of wiggle room. But then when you actually bend it to a certain direction and create something really interesting out of it, or something really unique out of it, then you're like, oh great, everybody's going to understand this, or people in general are going to be you know, affected by it, because it's within that limit of perception, it is a new spin on a certain thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was kind of like what you mentioned earlier, where, like, you know, some of the well, and not try to like glorify the idea, of course, but like really creative ideas comes down to like a simple statement, mm-hmm. or a you know, just couple sentences or whatever. So, you know, if you're trying to create something that's cool, you can condense it, like you said, make a more of a simple framework, and then just give it a direction and explore out. Yeah, for sure. Well, we're about like, I mean, I think now's a good time where you could do the screen share if you like, and we can you know, you can do a little drawing or something. We can just talk about what's going through your brain, Pan.
Are you getting this?
Yes.
Okay. Jesus. I haven't drawn an audience in a long time. I don't even know if I can still do this.
No problem.
It's also super late, so, you know, don't.
Oh, don't worry. You already kept me up, so, you know. Let me just see what I can do.
Sounds
good. Let me find my brushes.
Are you okay with like answering any other questions?
Absolutely. Yeah, just go for it. Like, just ask whatever you want.
I actually had an additional question on, like, when you were starting the studio, was there like could you just like describe like maybe some of the anxieties of like trying to get like a building, like a space and everything? Like, what was that like from like the logistics side of it?
Oh, that was really easy, because the first studio was in the apartment building where I already lived, so it was just downstairs. So it was really accessible, and it just made things a lot easier. But then eventually, like, we grew out of that space after a year and a half, and then from that point onward, like, it's just been growing bigger, and you just have to do more budget planning, and you have to, you know, put more money aside, and but you get used to all of that, you know, like, numbers are numbers. You just put more zeros behind it. After a while, it just you know, all feels the same. It doesn't make a difference if you're, you know.
So just start simple and expand.
You're still, I mean, like, you're still paying it. Like, it just doesn't matter. You still have to run a budget. And if you run a good budget, then everything is fine.
So I guess initially it was probably more about like finding the right people than worrying about the space, especially I guess considering that so much of it is online with like a lot of outsourcing with client work and things of that nature.
Yeah, I mean, like, we were fortunate from the beginning because I had a career to, you know, base off the first rounds of client work, and it was rather easy to get like enough work in the first few years. We had like a depression during 2013 where things weren't working out at all. That was like 3 years in, and a lot of planning went, you know, southward. But then eventually, you know, we rebounded and regrew our team and came out stronger out of it.
Yeah, I mean,
sorry, go ahead, Charlie.
No, go on.
Okay, yeah, I've got a couple of community questions. One, I got two for you. One's kind of funny, and then the other one's like a more legitimate question. The first one is, how many cigarettes do you smoke a day?
I've been smoking 3 packs a day for the past almost, let's say, 25 years, maybe.
Man.
Jesus. All right, and then the actual technical question is, what are some of your favorite sources for like historical reference? Any favorite books, favorite museums, that sort of thing?
I mean, I love my good old Pergamon Museum in Berlin. I love old school Angus McBride books from Osprey Publishing. They were amazing. I mean, there's so much good stuff out there. But I mean, also just, you know, reading up on a historical period. Like, for example, when I started doing research for work, and I read through the entire letters that Cortes wrote to the King of Spain from Mexico during the conquest against the Aztecs, because they really needed to read up on a lot of that material. I really felt like there was I had a maybe cultural gap in there that I wanted to be filled, and so I started reading up on that, and then went over to, you know, the Soto expeditions and other expeditions that failed, and then reread Pizarro, and then from that point onward, then you're starting to understand the grander scope of that historical aspect, and you're starting to search for specific things. And when you're searching for specific reference, for specific ideas, for specific costumes, then you are specifically knowing about that historical aspect, and you're specifically also understanding that historical aspect. So you kind of save the knowledge that you gained in a different part of your brain, and you make it reusable later on when you're in need of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, and especially like, I mean, is there anything like this is, I guess, from me, like, is there anything specific that, like, when I like in choosing like your resources, like, do you have like anything that you are immediately drawn to, or do you just, I don't know, maybe if I have like any channels or podcasts you like to listen to and pick up ideas from that?
Actually, no. I enjoy silence the most. Like, I think I'm the most creative when it's complete silence around me. I mean, I do listen to music sometimes, but like, I'd rather not. But at certain days, I'm just like, I just enjoy having absolutely nobody around, not hearing sound, because I feel like it's such a, you know, I hear people chatting and talking all day and playing music all day. Like, it's like this moment in time where I just want to be feeling like complete solitude, because I feel like it's I'm at the most creative in those moments.
Yeah, definitely.
Zero distractions, purely in your own zone.
Yeah. And then I normally do not reference until I really need to reference. So, like, for example, I will go for as far as I need to go or can on my knowledge that I have of a certain subject. But then once I run out of knowledge on how to really prepare it, how to make it happen, how to, you know, define it in a better way, then I will look at reference reference, and then we'll try to understand that particular aspect, but I won't use it necessarily to, you know, draw from it or to slap it on top of something, but I will use it to, you know, understand it at that very point in time, because that is, again, a very specific search. I need to understand the specifics of a certain thing, and then I spend time trying to understand it and trying to be able to reutilize it at a later point in time.
Yeah, I really like that mentality. Like it's a similar thing that I think of when I'm working, because like I like to keep the initial idea pure and work on it without looking at anything first, and then like I go and find, like if it was armor or something, then I'll go and look at references to expand on it and make it more functionally like accurate. But like I feel like if you start with reference first, sometimes you lose like the purity of the idea, like what makes it yours.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
Reference is more of a supplementation than a crutch, I suppose, or I don't know. Well, not a crutch, but yeah, you get it basically. So what's going through your head right now with the initial, like with your sketch exactly? Like there's a couple questions here that was like, do you visualize, you know, your drawing beforehand?
Right now, you know what's going through my head? I hope I don't fuck up in front of the audience. Like that's going through my head. Like I don't know, really. I just try to be gestural in those very beginning moments. And by gestural, I mean like capture a certain emotion, a certain idea, a certain way of presenting something iconic. And really, I'm not thinking about anything right now. I'm not thinking about lighting. I'm not thinking about value. I'm not thinking about background. Like the first thing is, you know, like something to spark me to keep on working on this idea. Otherwise, I'm just gonna get bored and start something else. And then only at a later stage, I'm looking at other aspects of the image as I come across. If I like it enough, if it's you know, strong enough of an image. But for me, like the first initial things that I'm trying to solve are just basic proportion, basic mood, basic, you know, anatomy, basic, you know, appearance and design of the character. And then everything else comes at a later stage.
Yeah, that was actually something I was going to ask you about earlier, because like you said, you were initially like a traditional guy where you're working with pencils a lot, and
yeah.
You know, you said you didn't really do like a whole lot with color.
Oh, actually, I mean, I didn't pick up digital drawing until I think 2013. Like I was still in the first couple of years of Sigma Vodka, like I was still drawing all my concepts in pencil. It wasn't until 2013 that I switched over. So it's only been like, what, 4 years now, me drawing digitally. Because I just get more things done when I draw digitally. That was the reason why I switched over. I just get a whole lot of work done, and I leave out the scanning aspect, and I can, you know, colorize something relatively quickly, and you know, I can capture an idea also very quickly in different explorative styles. So that is the main reason why I switched over. But like it's only been 4 years.
Yeah. I imagine that like your, you know, background in drawing like helped like not only the transition to digital, but the transition to you know, working with color that much more, because like, you know, you were like, I remember seeing like a lot of your pencil stuff, and then like when you initially started stepping into painting, I feel like that may have maybe been much easier since you knew like more what you were doing structurally.
Well, maybe, but I don't know. Like I got into painting so late, and I also don't think I really ever mastered it. Like I've always been very humble about my paintings, because I just feel incredibly, you know, simple and hacked together. Like my approach to painting is not very sophisticated, I would say. Like a lot of times it's much more, you know, coloring stuff in and blending it together a little bit, and you know, any sort of color knowledge, or you know, any proper, you know, mixing avoiding volumetric shapes for a good part of my life.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like I have like a similar background where I didn't touch like any color or anything like that. So that's why I was curious as to just what you, because I always felt like I always did like the typical cookie cutter thing where it was like sketch, ink it, color it. So that was kind of like.
I mean, for example, I can't build up anything that looks like, like anything, just going straight from volumetric shapes. Like I can't, I just simply can't. Like there's no way in hell I can just paint a face without an understructure to it. I need the drawing first. I need to have like the strength of the drawing established before I can do anything else with a particular piece.
That makes a lot of sense. Let's see.
We have a couple of community questions. Charlie Homenage wants to know about your 6 more vodka workshops that you do around the world. He's curious if you're planning to do more of those, and if like you're planning on perhaps reaching as far as South America.
Oh Jesus, we haven't done one in like what, 7 years, I think. Like when was the last workshop that we've done? I think in 2010. I have no plans of workshops right now. There's just so much work. I'm just organization and preparing and booking flights and making sure you get enough attendees and you sell out and all this stuff. Like I'd rather leave that to somebody else. Like let other people do workshops and organize them. I'd gladly come as a guest and teach for a minute, but like organizing them ourselves is a nightmare. Like I can imagine a million better things to do than organizing a workshop.
Gotcha.
Sorry for disappointing in that respect, but like I just really don't see myself ever going through that again. There's just so much hassle.
Yeah, I can
imagine. I'm not sure how to pronounce this guy's name, so I'm not going to try. But someone's curious about how has your approach to like design changed compared to like 10 years ago versus like what you're doing now?
In what way? Can you elaborate a little bit more on this?
I was just curious, I guess, like how your like approach to designing things like versus like I guess 10 years ago versus like how you approach now. Like has it changed much? Or
I mean, 10 years, I'd say it changed a lot.
Yeah, I imagine.
Maybe.
I mean, it better change, otherwise I shouldn't be working anymore. Like I should be, be moving a coffin or something. Like I hope it changed. I hope it changed enough for the better, because if it didn't, like I would be ashamed right now. I don't know, how did it change? Like you think my mindset, like the things that I take in, or what are you trying to ask about?
I think that the person's just kind of asking what we talked about earlier, really, and where it was just like, how your mind is working when you're talking about designing things, but really you kind of already answered that with taking something and be like, how do I make works look sexy? Like combining with statements and kind of, expanding from there. Seems like, I think that's like the general, and it can, I don't mean to like, speak for your mindset, of course, but I think that could be like anything where, you could take something completely unrelated, it could be like orcs and skateboards, and then all of a sudden you have a new genre. So, maybe that's a decent way to think about it.
Could you tell us how you came up with the name for you guys' studio?
Oh, that is such an old story, and I told it, I think, a million times already. It's the last thing that two of my best friends, Andrew Jones and Cora Kaufman, remembered after a night of drinking with me in a bar in Amsterdam, and it was me just ordering 6 more vodka over and over again at the bar. Like that was like the last thing that they kind of memorized, and they made so much fun of me the next day, because it was such terrible alcoholic and everybody had a terrible hangover, and nobody could walk anymore, and legs and muscles were hurting. I felt like it was such a pun by itself, and it like had like so many different connotations as to what it could be, And I felt like if I ever going to do something with my life, then it's going to be called Six More Vodka, because it's it's like an open canvas of interpretation. Like, what do? We don't produce vodka, obviously. Just do some concept art, but it leaves the room to do whatever you want with it. Like you can build IPs off of it, or a clothing line, or you can open up a shop for healing stones, or whatever else you want to do with that name. I think as a brand, it's really strong because it has no definitive meaning.
Yeah, it can work with pretty much anything.
And the last thing that I wanted to do is like call this company anything that is related to art. Just imagine something like Art Studio XYZ or so. Like, I was always despising an idea like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I totally get where you're coming from with that. I mean, especially if you just said like Six More Vodka Art Studio, like you don't. I personally wouldn't want to limit you wouldn't want to limit your possibilities, like of what you could do in the future, because you're always expanding, you're always growing. So
yeah, I mean, like, who knows if this is going to be an art studio in 10 years? Maybe we're going to do something completely different, repair motorcycles or something. Like I don't want to have a dream that has nothing to do, or has just to do with one particular industry.
So out of all the things that you've done, like already, like what would you say is like one of the huge things on your list that you haven't done yet? Like, make your own film. I don't know.
I mean, I've done quite a bit. Like, I feel like what I need to focus on the next few years is really being honest with myself as to, continuing to create my own stuff. I really want to do as much personal work as possible. I really feel like this is something that I've not done enough. I mean, like if you look at the length of my career, that we're talking about like 21 years in the grinder, and out of those 21 years, I've only been spending about 4 really trying to catch up with all the stuff that I really want to talk about, or all the stories that I want to tell. So it's a very small amount of time in comparison to how long my career has been. And I feel like the next couple of years I really want to spend on being as creative as possible for myself and for my own well-being, because I really feel it's a necessity. It's a longing, it's an urge that I have to produce as much personal work as possible, because I really think, that's my main goal. That's why I got into this industry in the first place. What makes me absolutely happy is to be my own director, and to approve my own things, my own stories. Like that consists of everything. It consists of not just drawing and designing, but it consists of writing as well. Like I've been doing a lot more writing with age. Sure, I would love to try out more different media. Like I would love to see how it feels to do anything longer than a trailer in terms of direction. I'm always curious about stuff like that, but like really my main urge is like to combine art and writing into a bigger and better product and whole, and see where I can spin stories and who I can inspire with these stories, and how many creatives I can actually reach to become part of the stories that I try to invent.
Nah, I think that, yeah. I mean, I think that's the ultimate goal for any artist, really, is to, have that complete creative freedom to express their ideas.
Yeah.
I have actually an interesting question about Six More Vodka. I said, what does it take for someone to work there? Does it, let's say, start as an intern or junior? Any advice on that?
Okay, so this is a really good question, and I think I haven't talked in public enough about it. So we did have a few situations in the past, and I mean by a few, it's nothing more than a handful, where an intern would get to the point where he would be, hireable, Normally our intern program is only 3 months long. And, you know, we try to find good or interesting interns that are promising by themselves already, that in the process of them being here, they might succeed at, you know, becoming better artists and showing potential for a proper employment position. But this is not something that happens regularly, and this is not something that you can bank on as an intern. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. Most of the time it doesn't. Most of the time, you know, you have a good time with the intern for the 3 months that the person is here, and then you say goodbye to each other and wish each other luck. You know, that's how it normally goes. But there are certain scenarios where interns have shined and completely surprised us and shown themselves from their absolute best angle, and became highly valuable assets in that respect. So got hired into a junior position, got a full-time job overnight pretty much, and stayed with us. And those moments are like the most successful ones, the ones where you as an employer are really feeling you've done something right, and things are coming together in the best possible fashion when somebody succeeds like that. That's like the most, I mean, the happiest moment that you can go through as a company owner, is seeing a young guy succeed. In general, the application to junior position goes as with, you know, a lot of other companies out there. We check portfolios. If the portfolio is strong enough for a junior position, then we call for a first interview just to meet each other, just to get to know each other, see if, you know, there's any you know, bad chemistry in the air or something. We do a proper phone or a Skype interview, lasts about an hour. And then if that interview goes well, then we give out an art test. And the art test is rather complicated. We put some high demands on the art test. And if that goes well, if the art test goes well, then we call for a follow-up. And then on the follow-up interview, we see if we really want to work together with that person. And if that's the case, yeah, then, you know, we're ready, and the senior might have found his position. But normally what we do is we have several people that we're interviewing at the same time. And so while the people are, you know, performing on their art test, they're actually also competing against other people that we have as potential artists in our state. And the people who perform the best obviously get picked. And that means performing not just as an artist, but also performing rather well in the soft skills, like showing interest in the company, showing some sort of investment in this place. So it makes sense for us to hire you more, because like the last thing that we want is, you know, to bring somebody on who's just a good artist but paying the ass to work with. So yeah, that's the general rule of thumb.
Yeah, so basically it's more just like pure interest in the company in itself, and like, you know, how hard you're willing to work, like how much do you want it, kind of thing.
Well, you know, like there's people who want to come here just to have it on their resume, and then, you know, like that's the people you need the least, because they're the ones that are going to be out of the door as soon as they get a better offer. You know, it's just the way it is. I don't want to necessarily, you know, build somebody up and put a lot of effort into teaching him everything that we do and know, just to see him go when he could be the most useful for the team. You know, just at the point where he gets good and then he just says, "Fuck you, I'll go work for the next guy." That's a failed investment for any employer or any studio out there. I mean, that just causes bad blood and burns bridges, and it's not a good mindset to be in.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
At this stage in in your career, do you still have like a strong like study regimen, or like how often do you, like, how much time do you spend doing like more technical studies?
I'm not a really good study guy. I've never studied in that respect, except for my really early teens, around like 13, 14, where I would draw out of an anatomy book. Like I'm not a guy that runs a sketchbook. I've never run a sketchbook. I've never gone to museums to draw certain things. It's just not my cup of tea. It's not what I want to do. It's not who I am. I really enjoy the process of drawing by itself the most. And I think I learn the most by just challenging myself with any kind of illustration that I have to deal with, you know, like this could be anything, you know, like be it something that I'm doing for this podcast, or something that I'm doing in my lunch break, or something that is just an idea that I want to capture really quick. That is studying for me. For me, like the output is what counts. It's not the subject that counts.
Gotcha. So you mainly like to just kind of like work on things that like you would have like interest in, like your actual own creative ideas.
I mean, like for me, the process of drawing is so important. It doesn't matter if I'm studying or drawing. Like, what is like? It doesn't make a difference for me. For me, that is irrelevant. It's irrelevant what I'm drawing, as long as I'm drawing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, like, rather than just be convoluted, saying you have to study this, just draw, and you know, the more you draw, the better you get. So,
I get worked up over things such as, you know, like, oh, have I studied enough this week? Did I draw enough legs, or did I draw enough elbows, or stuff like that? It's just like irrelevant. As long as you're drawing, you're drawing. It's like the best thing that can possibly happen is for you to just keep on drawing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
On a more technical side here, do you usually like to work with like a minimal number of layers to like more like, I guess?
Yeah, I do that. I do that quite a bit. I try to keep it together. But you know, since you know we're doing a presentation, I'm not really paying attention right now.
Yeah, I was just curious because like with like such a strong like traditional background that you have, primarily working with like pencil, where you know like with digital, you know, you can make a lot of like mistakes or not have to like be so meticulous about like the structure because you can correct on the fly. Like I was just curious, like if you like to work with like more minimal amount of layers just to kind of, you know, be like a little closer to your traditional roots.
Well, it really depends. It really depends on what I'm going for. Right now, it's just you know, it's just all show. If I was planning this picture out properly, it would be probably a little bit different.
I actually remember you were talking about on the stream that I listened to. You were talking about having to do like a couple comic issues and whatnot, and you said you don't really study much. You just draw. Like, how did you like learn a lot about doing page layouts and things like that? Like that's a specific interest.
Honestly, I hacked it. I don't know anything about it. Like I think I what's his name? The guy who did like the books about comics. Scott McLeod, I think is his name.
The Understanding Comics book.
Exactly. I think I read those three, and that was it. And everything else, I just made up on the fly. Like I've been
good to go.
I've been a terrible hack when it comes to that. I'm good at faking things.
Apparently you're faking things, except for gets by with people think that's like how you actually do it. So I mean, I guess literally just when it comes to studying or trying to improve a specific skill, just do the thing and don't worry so much about it, right?
Yeah, and I mean, like you can learn so much from movies and movie stills, and I've jumped out on movies so many years, like there's a lot of pop culture knowledge that I probably carry around that I just have instinctively or intuitively included in my work. But I've been, I mean, like I'll say it as it is. I've been a hack all my life when it comes to certain things, like I faked it more often than not, but not out of a bad intention, but just because some things need to get done, and sometimes you need to get the job done. you don't have time to think or to research. You just need to trust your guts and just go with it. And it
Just
doesn't
jump right in the water, yeah, and see if you can swim.
you know, it doesn't come from a bad place or a place of arrogance. It just comes from a place of, you know, like I don't have the time to figure this out now. But what I need to do is I need to figure it out. I don't have any other options. So like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do besides?
I think it's actually like one of the best ways to learn sometime is just like backing yourself into a corner and saying, okay, I have to legitimately perform this now. Like I don't have any options, you know, maybe I don't have the training or whatever, but like this could be the ultimate learning experience in of itself, just like actually making a genuine attempt at it.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, that was something I've been thinking a lot about lately as well. When it comes to, you know, you can stack up this like ensemble of books that will tell you how to do like every skill on the planet, but you know, if you go back to the caveman days where, you know, you have no books, you have no nothing, you know, walls and like rocks and sticks and everything else, nobody knew anything until somebody figured it out. And the best way to figure something out is just to do it.
Yeah, just pure experimentation.
Yeah,
that is correct.
We got a pretty good community question here from Steven Zapata. He's curious about like with your like full like illustration work, like how long would you say on average does it take you to like finish like one of those pieces? And when you're doing those pieces, do you like to work straight through them to finish, or do you take breaks often when you work?
Well, it depends on what kind of finish he's looking for. Is he looking for like a, you know, like a drawing with a bunch of colors, or is he like asking for a specific painting?
I think he's like curious about like a fully like rendered out painting.
I mean, like it really depends on. I think there's like so many factors that it depends on. Like, what mood am I in? How much time do I have to really ponder over it? Am I hungry? Am I not hungry? You know, like there's so many factors. Like I've done paintings in a day, and I've done paintings that looked simple to start with, but then like just forever to figure out in several days. It really always depends. It always depends on so many outside factors. It's impossible to say what the actual time frame is. I mean, sometimes I have a really clear idea where I'm going. Sometimes I just meander around and it takes forever to get started. Sometimes I have like a really strong lighting situation from the get-go, and I'm able to block the masses in really fast. And sometimes I struggle with like the simplest shit. And I just forget like what I feel like I knew yesterday. So it really depends. And there's honestly too many factors to just say for sure or for certain. But I can tell you in general, I work pretty fast. Like I do high speed runs like this one, where like I try to establish at least the core of an image within 45, 50 minutes. So I can just get the idea out there. And then once the idea is there, then the proper planning can begin later on, you know, and I can, you know, look at all the inconsistencies and just try to develop it off of there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's typically what I find is like with most like artists, like it's more of a case by case basis. Like it, you know, it just depends on so many different variables how long a particular piece will take.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely impossible for me to say. Because I would, you know, like I would just ramble something that is not true.
Yeah, like every piece takes me 3 hours exactly.
Exactly. You know, crap, like that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Going back to your like time at Marvel, I'm just curious, was there like a particular like IP that you worked on from Marvel that like you really like enjoyed, like that was like maybe a favorite of yours, like just out of curiosity?
I mean, like we spoke about this a little bit earlier before the interview started, but like I really enjoyed, like honestly, I have to say I really enjoyed the obscure titles the most. The stuff that, you know, nobody else wanted to touch. that was always like something I was really inspired by. I mean, no-name titles like Blade and stuff. That was the thing. That was the thing that really kicked my ass. I felt like I was really free to explore whatever I wanted to do, because nobody was giving a fuck about that particular character. And so I was pretty free to just explore and go nose deep into my own direction on these things. So I really like those stunts. Everything that wasn't a fan favorite, everything that wasn't like, you know, something that any other artist wanted to draw more than anything else was really interesting to me.
On the other end of that spectrum, was there like like any characters that were like, you know, so celebrated that you were almost kind of intimidated or perhaps maybe slightly daunted to work on?
I wasn't intimidated by them as much as I was bored by it. Like, because I, like, one point, like, what are you going to say about a character like Spider-Man that any other artist that is great hasn't said already? Like, the big characters have been drawn by pretty much everybody who's relevant in the art world. So unless you really feel you can bring something new to the table, why even bother? Like, if you're not going to be able to, you know, make it better, then why even put the effort in? Like, that just always seemed very obscure to me, and I never really understood that concept properly. So I really never liked working on the big characters. I always preferred like the no-name guys and stuff that nobody else wanted to touch.
Stuff where you had like a lot more flexibility to kind
of. Yeah, because like nobody really cared what the outcome would be, and like people had much less of an inclination to, you know, tell you how to do things, and that really gives a lot of creative freedom. That really frees you up to, you know, just explore things that you've never done before.
So, yeah, we got a community question asking, like when you were drawing as a kid, were your friends and family pretty supportive about it, or did you face any like negative feedback from them or anything of that nature?
Nobody supported this. Nobody supported this. They weren't interested at all, and like this was something that was never a part of my household or never part of my early social life, and that gave me a lot of headache early on. But like you grow out of that, and you just keep on doing it. You realize that there's others out there, you know, that do the same thing, and it's cool. It's cool. Now I look back at those times, and you know, I eventually will meet an old friend, and he'll find out what I'm doing, and he'll be like, "Oh, I always knew you'd make it." And you'd be like, "No, you didn't. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you're just making this shit up right now. Like, you never believed in me." So
it's like, oh yeah, so now you're on board.
You know, like it's just this weird way of like they're trying to like rewrite history on you, and it's just really annoying. Where you're like, "Oh man, just stop! Don't say anything anymore. Like, this is not true." So no, it wasn't supportive at all.
Yeah, I think that's never easy for most people growing up. Just like not a lot. I mean, there's some people who are kind of been blessed with that scenario, but like, you know, for others, it's I don't know, I guess more of a passion just to be like, oh, you know, this is something I just have to do. And you know, honestly, that can be more of a driving force than anything, you know, to be like, oh, well, you know, be like kind of like Rocky, you know, I don't have any support, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of have to see it like that.
So at this stage in your drawing, like what is it that's kind of going through your mind besides like, you know, maybe...
Right now I blocked him in, the base colors that I want to use down. So right now I'm just going to throw a multiply over him, just to get a base gradient into the form. So I can go ahead then and just, you know, start lighting him.
So with depending on like the type of drawing or painting that you do, like is your process always the same? And it's just like, oh, I go this far when it comes to painting, or do you take different? I mean, obviously you always go with like a line sketch first, I think, right?
Yeah, I mean, like that's my basic approach,
Mm-hmm.
is to draw it all first, because I really need to understand where I'm going before I'm doing anything. But then eventually, like once that is established, like really depending on my mood of the day, like I will do different experiments and try out different things, and try to solve an image in a different fashion, depending on really what I want to do or what I have in mind, or where I think the thing can be going. Um, it just varies so often. I don't have like a strict method of solving problems or a certain rule set by which I play all the time. I just really like figuring things out and trying new things, as I come across problems.
More of like an organic approach then, yeah.
Yeah, just experiment and wing it.
Yeah, I mean, like as I said, like I faked it more often than not, and this comes basically from like being experimental, and like trying to keep that part of your brain active.
Let's see, someone's asking, do you ever do any photo bashing or anything of that nature, and what's your like general thoughts on that, or do you prefer to like keep it strictly simple with just you and your brushes?
This is such a funny question. So, like at any interview that I'm doing, like somebody will come up and ask the photo bashing question. So, no, I don't do it, and it's not because I don't like it or people shouldn't be doing it. It's not because I think it's a bad way to do it. I don't think there's anything wrong with you doing it. There's nothing wrong with you doing it. We as a company, we just don't sell that kind of artwork. Like it's an economical question. We sell a different kind of artwork. We sell artwork that is developed from a drawing stage all the way ground up and helps us to keep our pipeline as artists together. And the only way for us to keep our pipeline is if everybody on the team knows what they're doing at every point in time, so that when they have to switch over to an image, they know exactly what to do with it. So there is not a single aversion towards that kind of art that I ever had. But people think I'm averted towards it because we don't hire people who do that predominantly or who depend on it to finish a picture. There's nothing wrong with you doing it. If that's the way you like to do art, do it as much as you can. I don't care. I really don't care. But it's nothing that we can hire for because we don't need it. We just don't need that kind of artwork in our portfolio. We don't need those kind of artists that are dependent on it. And that doesn't mean that they're bad artists. It just means that we can't use that kind of artwork.
Yeah, so the look you're going for.
So, like if you're selling screws and somebody comes to you and is a ballet dancer, it doesn't matter how good he dances the ballet, like you're still selling screws. And we're a very simple studio. We have like just one kind of service that we offer, and that is draw cool pictures. And most of the time they're drawn and painted, but they're drawn. They always have a drawing base in some sort of way. So for us to be able to hire somebody on board that is in some sort dependent on photo bashing or on 3D basis, he has just a different way of solving problems. It's a different way of approaching an image. It's a different way of composing an image. Like he goes through different steps, and these steps are not the steps our guys go through or I go through. So in the process of getting a picture done, like there would be a lot of hurdles and a lot of problems and stepping stones that we would have to overcome to get to a similar result or to a final result, which would make the team play very hard and very inefficient.
And that's kind of like break up the cohesiveness of like your pipeline.
Exactly. And that's all there is to it. But if you want to photo bash, be my guest. You can do that till your eyes bleed.
Is there this is kind of a, I guess, a question away from drawing, but it says, have you ever taken like a long break, or like, do you ever like, you're running a studio, you ever get time for like a vacation or just time to yourself?
Oh, well, I do a vacation once a year now. I finally started forcing myself to it, but it's still too little.
Oh yeah, for sure. But I mean, at least you keep like somewhat that you gotta have a little bit of that balance there, I suppose.
But yeah, I mean, like I get really anxious when vacation is too long. I feel like I'm wasting my time, and I just want to go back home, just and be creative or something. I don't feel like I'm of such a good use on a vacation for a long period of time.
Yeah, that was something I was actually gonna like ask you earlier. I know you don't get like, you get very little time to yourself, but like when you do get a small window, like what do you like to do outside of that?
That's a really good question. What I like to do, I hate everything.
Yeah.
No, seriously, I don't know. Like I do enjoy the company of friends a lot. I do enjoy like small traditions that I've established over the years, like going to the same bar every Tuesday and getting hammered. It's like my start of the week edition, like it's barely Tuesday and you just get really fucking smashed.
Yeah, I guess you're in that mindset.
So I mean, like those things. I enjoy the company of people a lot. I really, I have to say, like nothing makes me happier than having good people around. And good people make me happy in general. So that's like something that I really like. Like talking to my friends for long periods of time, just being incredibly stupid, pulling random dad jokes for a whole evening.
Someone's curious about like in your career, like whenever you hit like a low point, they're curious about like how do you go about like moving past it? Like, has there ever been like a moment where you felt, I guess, like just unsatisfied perhaps with your work, and it was like a struggle or anything of that nature?
I mean, the only answer I can give to that is that I'm constantly unsatisfied with my work, and I never like what I produce, so I keep producing. So I will finally reach that point where I'm not unsatisfied with my work anymore. It's just really what it is. Like I've never been happy with my work for longer than just a few mere days, and I just feel like there's always something better that I could be doing. And that's why I keep exploring. That's why I keep working so much. Like, this is really the main motivation when it comes to drawing and painting. Is just never feeling adequate enough, never feeling like I've done enough, never feeling like I've achieved or accomplished enough. I always feel like I need to do better. I need to perform better. I need to do more. I need to make sure that the next picture that I'm plotting out or planning out is more successful than the previous one. And it's just really what drives and motivates me. If I didn't have that, like I could have given up a long time ago. That's all there is.
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think that we all kind of I don't know if I've ever met an artist that just was like completely satisfied with like everything that they did, and just like doesn't want to move beyond like a certain point, being like, oh no, I'm happy where I'm at. I mean, but it's good to be happy in the moment too, but at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Like there's moments that are highly enjoyable in an artistic career. Like don't get me wrong. Like it's not like I'm taking a whip and beating myself senseless, especially not after this interview. But like there is a certain dissatisfaction that always comes with knowing deep down inside, okay, you can do this better. You can do this better. Don't use the cheap tricks that you used yesterday. Like take a different angle to do it. Take a different route. challenge yourself different, produce something in a manner that you didn't do before, keep it exciting, and so forth and so forth and so forth, and then literally in that respect grow as an artist, and that's all there is to it. I wouldn't know what else to say except for really listening to your gut and just constantly developing.
Have you ever had like any I don't know, any setbacks, like any injuries or anything that prevented you from drawing for a good amount of time?
No, never had a stiff arm or anything. I've been healthy for the most part in my life. I mean, except for the occasional flu hits you.
Yeah, of course.
nothing that would render me useless for months or so.
Yeah, I've heard of some people having setbacks like wrist injuries and I don't know.
I met a fair share of artists in my time that really had several big problems with their arms and motorics and whatever else. But I've always been lucky when it comes to that. I've never had anything similar appear to me or happen to me.
See, everybody that's listening to this, no, he has had no setbacks, and he still smokes 3 packs a day.
There you go. It's the truth.
So how far, you think, what stage are you at with this drawing now, exactly?
I mean, I really don't have a plan where this is going, so I might just, wing it and start the next one. At this point in time, I just, leave it on my desk and maybe do something with it later.
This is the general look for a lot of your characters in Orkin, right? With the neon lines and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, I actually like that a lot. Like that's I like the war painted kind of. Well, it's like war painted, but I don't know how to really describe it. Where would you place that?
It reminds me of kind of like a tribal type of thing, like aesthetic.
Yeah, for sure. Cole, you wanted to ask anything else about studio questions stuff
Let's see. Oh yeah, we got one community question. I'm pretty sure I already know the answer, but does Six More Vodka ever take freelancers on, or is it strictly an in-house studio?
It's an in-house studio. Everybody is on payroll, and the reason for it is that we're working on many big secret projects, and we just can't risk for the stuff to be handled.
Yeah, leak out. Yeah.
And the second thing is, freelancers are great people, but they're also career-driven people. So their commitment to a job might not be the same as a commitment that somebody has who is in-house. We might be just one job of many jobs that freelancer is doing in a particular month, and we might not get the same level of attention to a certain job that he's doing that he would potentially grant to a different project. Meanwhile, so I never felt like we're getting the same kind of range and strength out of the images that we're getting from our internal guys already. So that's why we never really went into the freelance route. We have the occasional situation. For example, one of our seniors, Michal, he worked with us for a year and a half in-house, and then he moved back to Slovakia because his wife wanted to get her second. They wanted to get their second child back in Slovakia, and so we made an exclusive freelancer deal where he does home office pretty much the entire year. But this comes out of experience, just because we knew how he works, we knew how dependable he is and how responsible he is. So it was a no-brainer. We wanted to keep working with him, so we structured the deal where he can work from home as a freelancer, and we have the safety of knowing how to handle it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I imagine there's like a little hesitation or something when it involves like a freelancer, like, you know, that comes in like, hey, you know, it's because most, like, I guess they want most of the time it's like they would rather like have your name on the resume rather than like make it the long lasting, you know, really want to stick around.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a reason why we prefer in-house guys. And also, I mean, like communication travels just so much faster in one room.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It makes a lot of sense, yeah, because like I get the sense with like how rigorous your like intern process and hiring process is. Like it seems like you're trying to build more of like a family, like within the studio of people that really like understand each other and get along with each other and have a like, felt
it all goes down to, you know, like it's I mean the mutual understanding just makes the quality of the art so much better. If you know what each particular artist is struggling with, then you know how to put like the right people together to solve a problem. If you know what to oversee in a certain art, like in a certain artist's performance, then you know you can react upon it relatively quickly. It just takes no time to just do a fix on somebody's machine on their Wacom, and you know, like show them exactly how to fix the silhouette or how to improve, you know, the hand here or something. And it's just like such a small step during a normal day-to-day operation. But if you would try to relay that feedback to a freelancer who's outside of the company, then it's like an effort. You know, you need to set up a Skype call, and then you need to do a share screen, and then you need to explain yourself, and so forth and so forth. And maybe that person is not really used to that way of working, and he's completely confused as to what you mean, and then it's like a long-term discussion. And so, like, it's a huge investment to just get like something really simple fixed.
Yeah, and I can imagine that would just completely like slow down the entire pipeline like development process, and then you're delayed on, you know, what the goals of the day are and stuff. Like I completely like see the benefit of keeping everything in house and like having like a smooth train, like with the work ethic and everything.
Mm-hmm. Sure. That was something that I was going to ask real quick about, like, you know, working digitally. I mean, I see you obviously probably only use Photoshop, but have you ever worked with a Clip Paint Studio or anything like that?
Clip Paint Studio, that sounds familiar. Isn't that the thing where you can draw perspective lines really nicely?
It's like another painting program, except it has like apparently like a smoother line efficiency or something than Photoshop does. It has like that built-in, I don't know, I'm not sure how to describe it.
I think one of my guys, one of our lead artists, Gerald, is using it from time to time, but I think he only uses it for perspective grids and similar stuff. I don't think he uses it for final polished images or anything. I think that's just mostly Photoshop.
Gotcha. I was just curious. Well, man, I mean, I know it's getting pretty late there, and we're at about the top of like 2 hours. Something that we do at the end of every interview that or, you know, podcast that we do is like a what would you say, like just I don't know, like closing words of wisdom kind of thing, where it's like, what would you say to people that are, you know, working hard, or, you know, other artists, like your word of advice for people that are, you know.
I mean, you can excel at anything that you repeat over and over again, but like the main or the most important thing of like wanting to achieve something is to just stay authentic to yourself and hold yourself up to your own standards. Like, just develop those standards for yourself. Just like try to be the best you can be for yourself and not for anybody else, and you'll succeed at it. I think it's just a matter of like consistently hammering that into your head and not being afraid of failing and not being afraid of, you know, challenging yourself, but just to keep going, just to, you know, keep on developing in the right pace and in the right mindset, and not seeing, you know, the world as a place of competition, but as a place where you can prosper properly, especially in this industry. You know, I think authenticity is something that is exhibited too little nowadays, and it's so often it's just what can be derivative of what else, what is hip, what is modern, what is talked about, what is interesting for certain moment of time. What is a trend? How can I follow that trend? How can I jump on that train? Something looks successful, so how can I do this to become successful myself? It's a very narrow-minded tunnel vision towards like what you should be doing. You should always ask yourself what you should be like. What would I do? What would I do if nobody else was looking at my shit? What would I do if I had no friends on the entire planet? What would I do if I was like a single human being on Mars with, a canvas? What would I be drawing? And those are the things that you should be drawing. Those are the things that you should be exploring. Those are the things that you're, that you're the most comfortable with, probably, and the things that are the most meaningful to you, and that those are the things that you're really gonna excel at. And if you excel at those, then you're authentic. And that's a very important mindset.
Yeah, I can completely agree with that. And it's like a quick random tangent that you kind of like touched on a little bit earlier, was like the idea of like your limitation as an artist, when in reality the biggest limitation is just your own fear to draw. Like that's kind of I don't know, like most people, like they say, oh, but I have no experience with this, I can't do this, whatever. But in reality, like your biggest weakness is just the fact that you haven't sit down and actually like done it, or so just stop talking about it, sit down and do it.
There you go. You just said it.
Well, everybody in the chat saying thanks so much for coming on, and we really appreciate it. I know that we kept you up, after hours and such, man.
Sorry about that, Marco, but thank you so much for coming on and sharing some of your insight with us.
Yeah, that was really nice. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, man. And I wish you all the luck with all your projects and everything. Definitely be keeping an eye on it.
Okay, I'll try to catch up with everything.
All right, everyone. We'll catch you all next time.
All right. Bye-bye.
Yeah, well, that was cool. Yeah, that was cool. I like listening to those guys talk. But yeah, that was Art Talk. I got the link in the chat if you want to subscribe to them. Or not in the chat, I'm sorry, in the video description. And this multi-brush got real sensitive real quick. to fight so much on this brush. Usually it's very quick. You fucker. Know what they did with the topology brush, but made it a whole lot more difficult in this one. So, there we go. A little bit thicker than that. Now, Ooh. It looks like it's about to crash. Okay, saved the disk successfully.
Hi, everyone. This is Art Talks session 15. We're joined today by Jared Krzyzewski. Jared, if you want to say hey to everyone.
Hey, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for joining us, man. I know you're super busy. Appreciate you taking the time out.
Oh, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Anytime.
Yeah, so to get started, we always start with kind of getting some background.
Sure.
If you could kind of tell us about your like how you first got into art.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I kind of remember vividly drawing was Sebastian from The Little Mermaid.
Oh, right.
And you grow up on cartoons and movies, and I grew up in the mountains of Colorado.
Me too. We share that in common, actually.
Oh yeah. So for me, like a drive to the corner store was 45 minutes downhill. So I spent a lot of time just watching movies and cartoons, and wandering around my backyard, which led to this kind of gorgeous trail, and so it was very spacious, and I had a lot of freedom, but not a lot of people around.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing I remember drawing was Sebastian, and my parents were so pleased with it that they made copies and posted it all up my dad's office. My father was a doctor, so he posted that up everywhere so his patients could see, and that's when I learned that drawing gets you attention.
Mm.
So I've been drawing for 20 plus years, and I didn't actually take it seriously until the latter part of my life. I grown up actually as an actor, and I was doing a lot of theater and commercials and all kinds of things. And so the art was a part of my life, but never like the dominating force of my life.
More of like a hobby, I guess.
Yeah, it was actually a hobby. And so all through college, because I went to college for theater, I kept drawing and keeping up with stuff, but it wasn't something that I took very seriously. So all through college, my drawing, never really advanced kind of beyond my high school level. Because in high school I did, I worked for the school newspaper, and I did cartoons and things like that, and took art classes on the side. But again, it was still never as dominating as kind of the acting part of my life. And so I didn't think that that art was valuable enough to me. And so after college, I kind of just wandered about for a while, just kind of figuring out what I was going to do with my life.
Soul searching.
And yeah, and it's so I here I was out of college, didn't really have a path yet, didn't really figure things out. So I tried different things and worked different jobs, and I still did theater, but theater kind of like dwindled as working became time consuming. And so eventually I worked at a Borders, and I worked there for a little over a year, and this kind of dates me a little bit, but that's when we had Borders still around. And I guess for some of your younger viewers, it was a bookstore that you could go in and buy books and things. So I was working at this Borders in Century City, in Culver City, and it was a grueling kind of experience, but it gave me a chance to read a lot of books and work I guess a normal life. And I kept going back to these books, these digital art masters books, and I kept looking at them and going like, wow, this is what artists are doing today. And I thought, man, this I was kind of at that right time where I knew that I needed to kind of do something with my life, but I didn't know what that was yet. So those art master books kind of drew me in, and I asked my cousin who worked in video games if he knew any where you go to learn this stuff. And so he pointed me to a couple of different schools, and so I looked at Gnomon very seriously, and that kind of clenched it for me. Is I was really impressed with their website, and the kind of list of board members that were on there, and I thought, okay, I'll go back to school. So I was about 28 when I decided to go back to school. So it was a later in life kind of choice, and so I put together my portfolio of all my drawings that I had done, and I hoped that it was enough. I spent a lot of time doing new drawings, so I was living with a couple of buddies of mine, and they wanted to go out and party, and I said, like, hey guys, I got to work on this thing. I'm trying, I'm trying to do something here. And so I turned down a lot of like social opportunities and parties and things like that just to focus on my portfolio very intensely to get that ready.
Was your time at Borders when you found those master books, was that like your first introduction to fundamentals, or had you had any technical experience before?
No technical experience whatsoever in any 3D.
Must have been eye-opening, I imagine.
Yeah, and I didn't even know that stuff was like being done, because I had a buddy in college that was messing around with Photoshop, and I went, wow, that's really cool. But I never messed around with Photoshop in college, and it wasn't until after college that I decided to like open it up and start learning. So I taught myself Photoshop, which was the first thing that I did. But other than that, like no 3D experience whatsoever. And it was really hard learning from like 0 to like, here, you're inundated with this for your life.
Here's this whole new world.
Yeah, exactly. Here's this whole new world, and now I have to kind of live in it. And the first day of school, first day of my intro to Maya, actually, they brought a tour through, and after the tour kind of comes through with a crowd of people behind it, and our teacher says, hey, you know who that was? And we're like, well, we're all just shrugging, going, ugh. He's like, that was J.J. Abrams. So that was day one of school, and I took it as a good sign. At least I hope.
Yeah, I would say so. You got somebody.
I was like, okay, maybe I was in the right spot.
Yeah.
So that was my first introduction to 3D, and honestly, it was really difficult to learn. A lot of my classmates had experience and had been in 3D for years, and so it was really intimidating from a beginner standpoint.
Yeah, I imagine like they probably have like were able to navigate like the toolbars and everything.
Absolutely, and man, they just whizzed around in those programs, and I'm like, what the hell am I doing? So, even as I was going through school to learn this stuff, I was like, I'm not sure that I'm doing the right thing. I don't know, like this is way beyond me. So it was really a challenging experience, on top of that. So, even though something is difficult, you got to just push through that anyway and try if it's what you want. And I'm a huge film geek, film and gore and horror and all that stuff. So getting to, I wanted to get there, but I didn't realize how difficult it was going to be.
Definitely an uphill battle.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, and worth it the whole way through. And I'm very lucky because I had a lot of great teachers and a lot of good friends show me the ropes and kind of welcome me into the fold. So
yeah, I imagine like so many big names there too. Like probably a great networking opportunity to kind of get your foot in the door.
Yeah, totally. And that's how it happened. Actually, was through Gnomon, and I was in my production design class, and our teacher. Jared Morantz, who is a mentor and just brilliant artist, he said like, hey, we're looking for interns at Aaron Sims, and does anyone want to try for an internship? And my hand went right up. I was like, yeah, dude, yeah. And so I gave him my contact info, and I was there a week later, starting an internship.
So I guess that was like your first like legit gig, I suppose, in the actual business.
Yeah, and I was going to school at the time as well, so I was doing this internship and going to school full time, and it was exhausting, but it was awesome. It was the great, really great experience, and so I'm still there to this day, albeit in a different fashion. So it's really, really cool.
I'm sure when you landed that internship.
Hey, Con, thanks for the like, man.
Motivation, like, okay,
love your artwork, by the way.
And I've got this internship, this awesome thing.
Yeah, it started feeling like, okay, maybe I'm doing the right thing here, and I was just floored by the work that the artists there were doing, and when you're surrounded by it and all day, you start picking up tricks and you start learning from them, and so they were a really group of great guys, and they really helped me grow as an artist. So it was just a really awesome time filled with like a lot of learning and just motivation, and so bit by bit I kind of worked my way kind of up, and started contributing to designs to projects that were going out. And there was no kind of feeling like that. It was really, really incredible and fortunate.
Yeah, definitely. So your specific area, I guess, because you've climbed the ladder quite a bit in the Aaron Sims company. Like your specific area is, I guess, your specialty is the character design or creature.
Yeah, so I'm a 3D character and creature guy. So I fell in love with Zbrush at Noman, and it's been just an amazing, amazing journey to work on since then. And so I definitely feel like I continue to grow. I'm still learning. Like I don't stop learning. So that's what's kind of amazing is you see all these other amazing artists out there, and you're like, oh man, I want to do that. I want to do what they're doing and know what they know. So it's been really, really cool.
Well, I mean, you talked a little bit about we talked a lot about the amount of work that it requires to actually kind of climb the ladder and keep improving and start and you talked about how you started having some issues with your wrists.
Yeah.
A little bit about that.
Totally. So one thing that Jared Morantz said to me once, and it really stuck in my head, is he said, concept art is not a job, it's a lifestyle. And that really stuck with me, and I didn't know what he meant at the time. I was like, no, it's not. You can have a life and do this too. And it turns out he was very, very right, and I was very, very wrong. It is a lifestyle, and it's a mode of thinking where you have to dedicate yourself to your art all the time, 100%, in order to get where you want to go. And I didn't realize that at the time. And to an extent, I really do push myself pretty hard. And I know a lot of people do in this industry. They're really they push themselves to exhaustion almost. And I did the same. I thought that I could teach 3 classes while working 50 hours a week, and then weekends working on freelance. So I thought I could fill my schedule as much as possible. And it was a mistake because not because my energy level was unwilling, but I didn't realize the physical toll that it would take on my body, on my arms and wrists. And so at the end of last year, I was in a really terrible place with my wrists, which affected my mood and my well-being. I thought my career was over. And I was looking at serious options about what to do. So I thought, okay, if my wrists go, right, maybe I can drive Uber, or, I'll Yeah, exactly. Like I'll just pick up somehow, and I'll just go back to living a normal life, and that really depressed me because I know that's not possible. After doing what you love, to do anything else is to be just to have a part of you that's taken away.
I'd say it'd be soul crushing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, dude. And I took weeks off of work, and did nothing just so I could recover. I saw a doctor. I saw an acupuncturist. I was like, okay, I gotta try anything that I can. I would dip my arms into buckets of ice water, just to cool them off because they felt like they were like on fire. So imagine at your wrist, right where the bending point of your wrist is. Uh, Imagine like a heat map, and I could feel that heat radiating at the wrist all the way down to the forearm and up the arm and so on. And so to do 30 minutes of work was agony. I had trouble even turning my wrists. So you can your wrists are in two positions, which is pronation and supination, right? So supination, your palms are facing up like you're holding a bowl of soup, and in pronation, your palms are face down. I couldn't even turn my wrists to do that, and so it was very painful, both kind of personally and professionally. I was very, very concerned about my future and my well-being, and yeah, it was a really trying time. So fast forward, I started seeing my trainer, and I've known my trainer for 10 years. We've always worked together. I recognized early on that being hunched over a drawing desk was taking a toll. And it was affecting my posture, which caused, a subscapular impingement underneath my left scapula. So your scapula is your shoulder blade, and underneath it, there's all this connective tissue. So I had like a knot that was forming underneath my scapula, and I could feel it all the way through my arm, and it was just really painful. So I immediately sought out a trainer to help me, and so I met my trainer. His name is Michael Galvez, and we've been working together for 10 years now. And he's been an extraordinary friend and a good kind of part of my health regimen. And he kind of woke me up to the fact that my chosen profession is also doing damage to my body. And so we're trying to find that work-life balance, and working on healing methods, so I can continue to do what I love. So fast forward to January here, and I thought my career was over. I thought my work was done. My life was over, essentially. And we sat down and we talked it out, and we're like, okay, here's what's going on. We need to address this, consistently. And so we started doing that. And the way we addressed it is what happens is you build up myofascial tissue in your arms, and you build this up over an extensive period of time. And when you're working on a keyboard and tablet, your hands are making all these kind of shortcut gestures, right? To do little things, and you don't think about the effect that has on your body and arms and shoulder, because it all affects everything going up the chain. Mm-hmm. So what was happening is I was building myofascial tissue at a deep level in my arms, and it built up so much that it became almost impossible to turn my arms, to turn my wrists. So it hurts real bad. Hurts real bad. And so what we started doing is we started taking a roller, and you can buy these things online. They're like foam rollers with little knobs in them. And he started like going to town rolling on my arms and wrists. And it was by far the worst pain I've ever been in. It really, really hurts to do a session. But by the end, all that myofascial breakup allows me to turn my wrists again, and it allows me to work a whole day without feeling any pain whatsoever. So there is a method to fix your arms, you know, if you're going through this stuff. And, you know, I'll just put it out there. If you're ever feeling like arm, you know, discomfort, seek out a professional trainer, or a massage therapist, someone who can massage and break up that deep tissue, because it just builds over time and you don't realize it because we're sitting at a desk all day long. That stuff just like builds up, and it can be really counterproductive to your health. I know that was
important to emphasize, is like finding a good balance to counter it, because you are just completely immobile, you know.
Right.
Your computer.
And for long periods,
if you don't do anything,
yeah, you're
can put an end
all
to
day
that.
every day.
Yeah, and then like later in life, it can like end your career there.
Yeah, man. Like I'm 35 now, right? And I've been doing CG for 7.5 years, and it really didn't start affecting me until like last year. You know what I mean? Where I was pushing myself at a level that I thought I could continue to do that, and it turns out you can't. There's a price to pay. So since I started opening up about it, I've had a lot of artists contact me and tell me like similar issues that they're going through, and it's all the same thing. We sit at a desk hunched over, and that can be really counterproductive to your health.
I agree. Like I think that like that's a huge point to emphasize to people that are pursuing an art career. Get up, go out, go work.
Yeah.
Because like I always try to make a bit of exercise every day, just because we spend so much time sitting.
Right.
If you don't find that balance, you're gonna.
You have to find that balance in your life, and destroying your body for your art is counterproductive, because then you don't get to do your art, right? And that's what the true motivator is creation. And if you feel like your body's going to suffer, don't do it. Don't do it, man. So get out, stretch, like every hour, get up, stand up, roll your shoulders back, stretch, break up that myofascial tissue, build up, and then go exercise, like do cardio, because we build up what's called lactic acid. Oh, I'm getting an echo.
Yeah, we get some feedback.
So a lot of my first projects were more commercial work, or kind of a pilot stuff for TV. So one of the first projects I worked on was ABC's Once Upon a Time, and it was designing Jiminy Cricket. For the pilot. So I did the design in 2D, and then I did a 3D model, which is still in there in the pilot. And so it was really, that was like my first experience with like TV, because it had a fast turnaround. So getting to see it like within a matter of months was really, really cool.
That's awesome. So like from there, what was like the next thing that you sort of transitioned into?
While I was interning, we actually worked on Ninja Turtles. And I was an intern. My work was terrible. I watched all of these senior level artists really amazing designs for it.
Yeah, definitely. And we wanted to talk a little bit about like your. You said you worked as a freelancer versus working in a studio as well. Like, you have any like comparative?
Hello, everyone. We're here for Art Talk Session 7. We are here with Max Grech. Hey, Max, how you doing, man?
Hello, I'm great, thanks.
We have a typical way we like to start stuff like this off. We just you can tell us about how you like got into the. I don't know, what was your initial inspiration for getting into art?
Right. Yeah, well, I guess I've always been painting since I was like tiny kid. So I've always pretty much known what I wanted to do when I grew up. So I knew that I wanted to do. Firstly, I was a lot into comics and all that, and I knew that I wanted to do like pretty much anything related to drawing. Just so from there, it's just I've been kept going, and I've kept painting and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was like 18 years old, I think, I decided that I really wanted to like pursue it like professionally and make it work so I could actually live of it as well and not just paint for fun.
What was it that you saw that made you want to like work in the industry like that? Was it like, did you I don't know, for some people I know like conceptart.org was like a big thing that got them started.
Yeah, I did check the site a lot when I was like 14 years old or something, but I guess the main site that I was into was DeviantArt. Uh, I guess so. I guess my goal was to get some kind of recognition on there. I saw a lot of people doing like commissions, like for people on DeviantArt drawing their characters and all that, furries and all that stuff.
So did you self-study, or like did you just decide to go to art school for it, or?
I'm all self-taught, so
Awesome.
I guess the biggest reason is because there isn't like any good art schools here in Sweden, specifically for digital art, which I knew that I wanted to do. I got my first Wacom into 3, I think, when I was 15. So I kept drawing digital since then, and I'm totally handicapped with pen and paper now.
Oh man. Yeah, it's like completely the opposite with me. Like I just got my first into it. It's like I don't know. It's been about a year, you know, but it's I don't know. That's definitely a hard leap to make. Like I don't know if I could imagine like being like being handicapped against like pen and paper or like pencil, you know.
Yeah, I've tried drawing with it, and I guess the biggest problem is that I don't enjoy it anymore. Of course, I can sit down and draw with a pen and paper, but I don't think it's fun anymore. Just like it twitches in my left hand because I'm so used to clicking Control C all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you kind of get spoiled like with all the features in Photoshop. Yeah.
In terms of being self-taught, like what did you do? You know, like what would you recommend? Like what did you source?
Yeah, people ask me that much, and like at the time when I guess when it was the most vital part to know what to practice and what to study and all that, I didn't like think too much about it. I actually just kind of drew what I thought was fun to draw at the time. So I guess that was the most important part to me, like that it always was fun for me to paint. Of course, like doing studies and all this is like super important to learn like technical stuff.
Did you learn like Loomis stuff or something?
Huh?
Did you learn like Loomis or anything like that, or?
Oh, you mean like inspirational artists?
Yeah, or like just how you picked up the fundamentals.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I've always had like a tough time deciding what style I want to paint and all that. So I've drawn a lot of like switch styles a lot, I guess. So yeah, I like to draw realistic stuff, and I drew a lot of manga stuff as well at the time.
Okay.
So what was your first like break into the industry? Like what was your first job?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I've had so like for a year ago, I was like I didn't have any jobs at all, and I thought I wouldn't like even have a chance to earn enough money to live of this work. So like for a year ago, it just kind of took off, and like I got some early work for Hex, which is like a trading card game, online based. I don't know if you heard about it.
I haven't heard about that one.
A new one to me.
So I guess that's like at the time was the biggest work that I got. At least was big for me compared to other stuff that I've done, because most stuff I did before that was like for like private person, like indie, really small indie companies doing iOS games and all that.
Gotcha.
So you say your aspiration is to work in remember you said that before we came into the interview, that your aspiration is to work for maybe Pixar or DreamWorks.
Right. Yeah.
At least in the long run of things. Like, do you have any like personal projects or anything like that that you, I don't know, that you like want to see happen, or I don't know.
Absolutely. I do have like a ton of stuff in my head all the time that I want to do. I have my own really simple iOS game that I've been working on for a long while now, which I never get to be able to get finished because I have other work at the same time. So, but other than that, it's like I do have like stories and all that I want to do. It's just finding the right format to show the story and all that is really tricky.
Yeah, definitely. So after you did work on Hex, like what was your next sort of big, I guess, industry job that you had?
Well, I guess like the biggest I would say is Blizzard now. After that, yeah.
How was like working for Blizzard? I mean, I'm sure it was awesome, but like, can you like shed any light on like what you did for them and sort of like what your role was?
It was a super good experience, and I mean, I like I said, like for a year ago when I didn't have any work, it just kind of took off, and I've had constant work since then. So I've never really had a break to like take in that I got the chance to work for Blizzard. But they were like totally what I hoped them to be. Like in sense of how they approached me and just basically working for them. They were like super good and great feedback and all that stuff.
Did you do primarily like a lot of concept art for their games, or like what was your sort of?
I've just done like one illustration that I did for the latest Hearthstone cinematic they did for their latest expansion.
Mm-hmm.
So I did one image for that trailer.
Yeah, nice. So they showed that off at BlizzCon this year, right?
Right, that's correct.
Well, that must have been pretty exciting, especially the fact.
Yeah, it was really, really cool. Like actually seeing the trailer was like almost more fun than getting the job.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it must have been a pretty like great feeling, like to see your work kind of come to life.
Yeah, that's kind of when you realize how cool it actually was to get the chance to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So like in the beginning, when you first started taking like, you know, commissions and such, like when you were first starting out, was it like, I don't know, I mean, was it like a lot of ups and downs, really difficult?
Yeah, I mean, like with money, I guess it was. I guess like I really don't care about the money in the end, as long as you get to paint and you're able to live of it somewhat. That's pretty much all that matters. But of course, like money always is the biggest problem. So as I worked with a lot of smaller indie companies. That was the biggest issue.
Well, then when you had your when you really had your break, you know, like where you got on with like Blizzard and stuff like that, was there something that you did that kind of set that off? Like, did you, I don't know, well, was there a particular image that you painted, or was there something that like got like a lot of attention that kind of put you on the map?
I actually don't know. It's pretty funny because Blizzard contacted me through DeviantArt actually, and through like a personal message through DeviantArt. So it was kind of like, hey, do you want to work for Blizzard? So I was like, hey, yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah.
So I didn't actually know if it was a serious thing at first. I don't know why someone would trick me, but yeah. So they reached out to me through there, and I guess it was like probably 2 months after they contacted me through email again and said, hey, do you want to get started?
Wow. Yeah, I've actually heard like a lot of companies will do something like that. Like I don't remember, someone we interviewed, I don't know, that said like, I don't know, he got like a message from, I don't know, some big name in a company, and he thought it was like fake or whatever until
Right.
like
Actually, Blizzard, it was Evan. Yeah, he worked for Blizzard.
yeah, that was it. And then he was like, he messaged other people in the company. They're like, no, that's him.
They're like, yeah, that's our boss. Yeah, it was like super.
Yeah, yeah, you really don't expect it, so.
Yeah, I guess you have like a moment where you're just trying to like process, like, did Blizzard really just contact me? Is this happening?
Totally.
That's awesome.
So I was really, I guess I said I didn't hear from them in like 2 months, so I was super disappointed as well. But then they got back to me, so.
Rock on, yeah.
Yeah.
So I noticed you have really awesome line work here. Like, is that just like a chalk brush you're using, or?
Yeah, this is just like a basic chalk brush.
Gotcha.
I mostly use that one. For the line art, I use it with like, what is it called? Like, so you have different pressure.
Oh, is it shape dynamics with transfer,
Right.
basically?
Yeah.
Got it.
So for the line art, I use that one, and when I do the shading, I use the one that's pretty much don't have shape dynamics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I noticed you've been doing like, you do like a lot of like, you do the wide strokes and then you use undo until you get the line correct.
Right.
Yeah, that was a samurai piece that I showed you. Like, I really picked up on that when I was doing that, and man, it was a killer. Spent way too long trying to do line work.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, but I think that's like the fun part. You can like throw down lines, and if you don't like it, you can like, you somewhat like, in some way you still have the shape in your head that you did, so you know how to place it more carefully the next time.
Yeah, there was a moment I had the other day actually when, because like at my job I can only work in my sketchbook, and I opened up my sketchbook and I was going to do a sketch, and there was a moment where I made a line and I was thinking about the undo button. And I was like, okay, hold on a minute, I can't undo this.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm even like, I do that when I paint like my walls in my house.
It's crazy.
So, yeah.
So you're just doing like a work kind of thing, is there?
Yeah, I guess it's just basic work.
So did you just like make a selection out of your line work? Like, did you just like do like a selection of that and then fill it in?
Yep, yeah, basically. I use the magic wand tool to just select the outer area, and then I right click and inverse the selection.
Yep.
And then I just fill it in. And then I use like, I use this base layer I have as a selection tool. So as I press command, and then I press on that layer and I get it as a selection. So when I want to paint in like different layers, as I do if you had here, I would paint in that like this.
Gotcha. And I guess that preserves your line work too, so like you can kind of maintain that throughout.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I like
so
that.
like I usually put my line work to overlay. So like if I know that I want to remove it, and then I don't have to do as much paint over at the final stage.
So is this
So,
like normally how
how
you
long do
start?
we have so I know how fast I need to paint?
Oh, we have all as long as you need to paint it.
All right,
We have
cool.
limited time. Is this like normally how you start most of your paintings? Like, do you usually start with line sketch, or do you ever just kind of like go in and just start throwing paint around, or?
Well, I've tried that technique of just going in and start painting values without any line work, but it just doesn't work for me at all. I really want to have control of the design and like the shapes before I do that.
Yeah, I get this.
So now I always do line work first.
Notice you're keeping your selection going rather than making a clipping mask. Do you ever like do that or?
I actually don't use that.
No.
I think this works easier for me.
Mm.
I don't want to be locked down to a layer or anything like that.
I mean, it's basically the same. I guess it's
Yeah,
kind of
yeah, I guess.
So are you going to like just establishing your values first, and then you're gonna like go over it with color, or what's the?
Yeah, I paint all my values in black and white first, and then I go in with the colors.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think it's extremely rare, but like I haven't seen a lot of artists who will actually like go in raw with color, and
I actually used to do that some time ago. But just like being efficient and like having more control this way is so much better. Because now I can go in and change the colors however I want them and all that without like screwing everything up.
No, I definitely like your approach so far has been like very unique compared to like most of what we've seen. Like there's a lot of things that I think are really cool about this. Like I'm gonna have to try some of it.
Yeah, there was I don't know. I don't think I've ever actually seen somebody like, I don't know, with how they typically they start out with like, their sketch will be pretty rough or something, then they'll just lower opacity and go over with like finished lines.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I found that like I used to do like super rough sketches, and like when I did it, sorry, that's my dog.
He just wants in on the interview.
Yeah. He wants all the attention. So yeah, I found that like when I did the really rough sketches, I spent way too much time cleaning up in the end because I did have to do like a lot of paint over.
Yeah.
So I really tried to do like my first sketch as clean as possible, so I don't have to do a lot of cleanup later on.
Yeah, I guess it would save you time in the long run.
Excuse me, I need to go.
That's all right. Yeah, I've never seen somebody go in like and lay like, you see how he laid the head form?
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, like he started out with like that general like shape, and then he like worked inward. I don't see people do that very often.
Yeah,
okay,
actually, like,
sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay.
You're fine.
He's still a puppy, so he is quite a handful.
No doubt.
Yeah, I guess he's at that age where he wants a lot of attention.
1 minute.
Oh, it's okay.
You're fine. Yeah, we'll have to put a special guest, Max's dog.
Yeah, we gotta just figure out what Max's dog's name is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like seeing like this approach. I knew it was like really different right from the gate.
Like I like this. Like it's really cool.
No, definitely.
You have to practice really sharp lines. Yeah. Man, I'm just gonna grab the chalk brush after this and try it.
Yeah, I'm just gonna get one. I mean, you didn't have to be a chalk or anything like that. I'm just gonna go with like the regular, just like the hard round kind of deal, and see like, I don't know. It's obvious that like, you know, doing those like broad strokes and then, you know, using the eraser just like in that fashion is
That's awesome.
So you're back.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Well, what was your dog's name again?
My dog?
Yeah.
He's called Dino.
Dino. Awesome.
He's a Mexican hairless dog.
Oh. We're gonna put a thing.
People think they're super ugly.
Yeah.
We were gonna put like a guest thing for your dog in the interview.
Special guest appearance from Max's dog.
Yeah. They always have to bark when you're busy doing important stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he just waited all day for you to start your demo, and he's like, "Yeah,
right, yeah."
He's like, "I'll sleep all day until the interview tonight."
Yeah, that's like the funny thing. Like, I'm the one going up in the mornings and waking him up because he has to go out, not the other way around. So right now I'm just kind of like masking out the body as well, just because it would be easier to shade.
Yeah.
Shade the face so it doesn't go over the body as well.
Gotcha.
So well, I mean, I'm sure you probably can't talk too much about it because it's NDA or whatever, but like, I mean, are you expecting to be doing like mostly just Hearthstone stuff for Blizzard?
I don't know. I guess, yeah, because my style fits it pretty well. I actually did apply for to work for World of Warcraft, a concept artist, but they thought my style was too pushed, I guess, and didn't look like their in-game stuff.
Gotcha.
I've always wondered how they kind of like made that shift, because like I've seen some of their concept art books before, and their concept stuff can actually be like, I remember when they first did the panda, I think it was like Pandarium or
right, yeah.
Yeah, like that actually looked kind of like real. Like it like the sketches looked more realistic, and then
Yeah.
like, in-game stuff is very cartoony.
Yeah, I really did have that approach. As I have a lot of Blizzard art books, I knew that their style was pretty pushed in the concepts, and then really brought back when it was put in game. So I really thought that was the right approach, but I guess it wasn't.
I wonder why they particularly do that. You know, like I remember it's almost kind of like, I don't know, like kind of gives you like a false sense of it. Like when I first saw, like, as I don't play the game, but when I first saw is it Cataclysm?
Yeah.
Yeah. When you first saw that, like, it's this realistic dragon with this big metal jaw, and you're like, oh wow, that looks awesome. Then you like look at the, it's like super cartoony.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's like that's why I had the approach, but yeah, I guess it worked out in the end, anyways.
I mean, you'll know that in the future for if you ever apply for it again.
Yeah, definitely. And I did get a lot of feedback on that as well. So.
And usually, like that's actually something I've been talking with a few people lately. They say like even if you won't get like a job, like, you know, mostly like you'll still like get like feedback or something from the AD there,
right?
Whatever else. Like that's usually pretty common.
I don't know. Like I actually haven't like tried to get work in that way before, and actually doing an art test and applying like that. But in that case, yes, I did get like great feedback and what to think of, and I actually did try to copy the art director's style as much as possible. But yeah, I do think like you always will get like proper good feedback back, like maybe what your strength is and what you should like think about.
I guess they kind of give you the notes you need if you want to go and like apply them and then come back with a portfolio more tailored for that position, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. Like that's always something I wonder as well, if like companies, like if you're a young artist, if companies think about that, and like think about like if you can develop a lot or not.
Yeah.
So that's like I'm very curious if they think like that.
So I guess right now you're just focusing on blocking in your forms and your value.
It's really tricky to paint and talk at the same time. Actually, I've never done that before.
Yeah, I have a difficult time with that as well. So it's just, I don't know. It's always makes me feel bad because everybody's talking, and then I'm like, wait, what did you say?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm starting to feel like that way now as well. But yeah, I'm just roughly blocking in the shapes and all that now.
It's already got like a very early read, like three-dimensionally, like it's awesome.
Yeah, it's just like getting all the different elements, like the teeth and the eyes, getting them pretty rough, just so I can get like a good overview of how the values will look.
I really like how you did the teeth, where you just did like a layer above for the teeth, and then you went a layer below and filled in the black for the mouth. Like that was smart.
Right.
It's like that was efficient. Like I would have never thought about that.
Yeah, I've seen like a lot of like shortcuts that you're using, like in that. Like how did you go about learning like Photoshop when you first started, working with it? Like was it
Gosh, I don't know. As I said, I got my first Wacom when I was like 15.
Mhm.
So I did use Photoshop, like the first sketches and all that I did. But then for some reason I went and started painting in Flash because I thought the program had like this cool feature where the line work like automatically did cool shapes, so it looked good without not having to think too much about it. So yeah, that was pretty dumb, but I did paint in Flash for a long while. But I don't know, like I don't think there's much you have to learn about Photoshop except using like the brush, I guess. So I guess like doing like organizing your layers and all this, and it just comes with time, I guess. Like how you prefer to work like personally.
Definitely.
So right now when I have like a better overview of my values, I usually like to go in and do more details.
Start adding textures and things, I guess, like flesh it out a little more.
Right, yeah.
You do that same technique, layer below, cast shadow.
Yeah. That's a go-to.
That's smart. That's efficient.
Yeah, that's really smart. Like I'm taking some notes. Yeah, and then you always have that, I guess, selection, like keeping your paint strokes from going out of the silhouette.
Yeah, I have this like thing. I don't know what it's called, like the lock thing there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that like keeps it inside the form.
Right, yeah. So like my lines don't go outside.
I actually like that better. Like a lot of people use like the clipping mask and they have a bunch of separate layers, but it seems a lot more fluid to just stack them like that and then use the log to keep the brushes inside without having to
Right, yeah.
like go too crazy with like doing a ton of clipping masks and separate things like that. Like this you're just making them as you go. Like it's
Right,
actually
yeah.
really smart.
Yeah, and then I like, for example, like when I put on the colors, I just select that layer and I do a color layer.
So you would select like a base tone, I guess.
Right.
That's
So that's why I put on the colors later.
yeah, and I guess from there you would just like paint on top with like actual like different, I guess, hues
Right,
and stuff.
Yeah.
That is brilliant.
Yeah, I'm still working on. I have a Gumroad tutorial that I will be releasing next week. So
Is
I
it
will
just
cover a lot of my basic process in that.
yeah, okay.
Is it like a character painting like this, or do you like cover some other territory, or?
It's pretty much like this picture I'm doing right now. Just kind of basic, just to show how I work, my process and how I do my layers and all that.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to check that out. You said it's coming out next week?
Yeah. Next
Yeah,
week.
awesome. Yeah, anybody watching too, check that out. Yeah, Gumroad.
I mean, like you could sit forever with doing just values in black and white. It's
You've
very easy.
been using like one brush pretty much too this whole time, right? Just
Yeah, I'm
like
just using it's just a chalk brush.
So
I
what's
really think it gives a clean result compared to like textured brushes.
Yeah, it just has like barely a little bit of grain to it, so
Right,
like you
yeah.
still get like a painterly effect, but it's not over like too crazy.
Right.
Yeah, I like it.
So what's your routine like every day? Like, do you like when you start? I don't know. Like when you get up, like do you immediately go start painting, or do you like go maybe exercise or something? Or
I guess I start painting right away. Do like a warm-up piece or something just to get some sketching and just to like get the hand going. I think that
What do you
helps a lot.
like to do when you warm up? Do you do like a lot of compositions or gestures or?
Just whatever comes to mind, or like a piece I've had in my head for a long time or something. Just I think like doing a warm-up, it's important to do something you're comfortable with and really enjoy painting.
Yeah, I guess something that you don't have to think of too much about. It's more about just
Right.
getting your mind.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Oh, for those listening, that's Max Grecki talking. That's Art Talk Session 7. Let me yeah, I'm not talking. I'm just listening. Just listening. So for Nurmwood, there's a link if you want to watch it. And for those in Facebook world, I have no idea how to get a job at Blizzard. Yeah, I would just say copy their style as much as possible. If you want to be a 3D artist, make sure you copy their 3D art as much as possible. Just wherever you want to be. If you want a job in the industry, then you definitely want to go for environmental, texture, prop, artist, concept artist. There's a lot of competitions, and also with character artists, a lot of competition. Effects, not a lot of competition. Any type of simulation, or I mean, like getting Unreal effects and all that stuff. I mean, there's way less people in effects than there are in like the character environmental side.
yeah, because if you're struggling with your warm up at the beginning of the day, you're not gonna
you're gonna like shit.
Your day.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Starting off with an art block.
Do you ever have days like that where you get like an art block?
Like all the time. It's the worst.
How do you get through it? Do you just try to force yourself to sit down, or do you ever just say,
Yeah, you stress painting, like crazy. Like I have to get it to work now. I have work to do, and oh yeah, nightmare. But like usually, what works for me is like pretty much not painting, doing something else for a while. Maybe watch a movie or go play some games or something.
Just something, I guess, to get your brain relaxed, I
Right.
guess.
Yeah. Because stressing about it really doesn't help.
Yeah, I guess if you're not in your zone, like, you know, and you're not really caring about what you're doing, then you're
Right.
kind of wasting the time anyway.
Totally. That's like the tricky part of having like a creative work as a profession.
Yeah,
Always have to
constant
think.
struggle.
Right, yeah. People are always thinking like, oh, you have it so easy. You just sit home and paint all day.
You think this is easy?
Getting the ability to do it is you know, hard enough, let alone actively doing it.
Even when you have the ability to do it, like, you know, you can know everything in the world and come into like a block where you're like, oh man, how do I figure this out?
Yeah.
Right.
That's just like the first half is just getting the technical skills, and then you still have the struggle of actually designing something.
Yeah, and then you know you have the technical skill to do it, so you have to do it well.
Yeah. It's like I can't just half-ass this, you know. Yeah, you are too, and you'll just be like, man, this is unacceptable.
Have you ever taken any jobs where you were like unsure if you could tackle like a specific subject they wanted you to do?
Yeah, that's pretty funny. Like as I mentioned before, like the indie work, like for iOS games and a lot, like I did like for like a year ago or so. At that time, people didn't come to me for my style or what I did. So it was more like I looked for work and adapted to what they wanted.
That makes sense.
So usually now people come to me and want to paint like my style, I guess. So that's pretty amazing, actually.
Yeah, as I said, it must be nice. Like after
Gratifying,
working for so long, they finally want you to do what you want to do.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Do
I mean, like.
What, and we'll pay you for it.
Yeah, exactly.
So, like, in terms of subject matter, do you like to just like paint like fantasy, orcs, and elves, and things like that, or is there something else that you like really enjoy?
I do enjoy painting green guys, orcs and zombies. But I don't know, like, really do enjoy like fantasy, sci-fi, and modern themed stuff as well. So,
it's a
like,
good range.
whatever. I mean, it almost depends on what, like, if I played a fantasy game or whatever inspired me at the time, I guess.
Yeah, so I imagine like if you just watch like a futuristic movie, it might put you in the mood. You know, and then if you play a fantasy game or something, you're like, yeah, I'm in the fantasy zone today. Do some fantasy stuff. Yeah.
Totally, yeah.
That's kind of I am. Like I like to dabble in a little bit of everything. Makes it more interesting too, like not getting stuck on just one subject matter. Like I couldn't imagine wanting to paint literally the same subject every single day.
That's what causes art blocks.
Yeah.
You don't really gain anything out of it either once you do that for so long.
Yeah, you just kind of remain stagnant on the same subject. So you know, if you dance around a bit, like I think it's more fun. Like learn more and you can do more then too, because you'll get experience in all those areas, and you'll just any kind of situation you're in, you'll be able to at least have some kind of base for it.
Totally. So like what I like to do also when I put down some basic values like this, I like to make a selection of that base layer, and then I make a multiply layer on top, and that way I can go in like really softly with the chalk brush or so, and then just use like soft airbrush and erase parts out to push like some shapes even further.
Kind of enhance the value contrast a little bit.
Exactly.
So like for your brush settings, do you just kind of go with the default? Is it just like shape dynamics and then transfer?
I don't know. These brushes I picked up from somewhere, I can't remember, but I'm horrible with brushes. I never do my own custom brushes or anything like that. But they are pretty much the basic brushes, yeah.
Gotcha.
I will include them in the Gumroad as well.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was it?
I will
He's gonna
include the brushes in the Gumroad tutorial.
Okay.
Yeah, after you put that like shadow under the cheek there, like he's really
Right,
starting to pop.
So that I'm doing it, like I have a bad habit of flipping my image constantly as well.
I'm the same way. Like I have to like I'm checking, is this right?
I don't think that's a bad habit at all. Like, I mean, man,
yeah.
if you're gonna do it, make sure it's right.
Yeah.
Actually, I've been doing that kind of like with compositions lately. Like, whenever you try to like set up a composition, see if it works both ways.
Right, yeah. Especially when you're painting like symmetrical faces.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I have to do it several times for front views.
Yeah. It's so easy to get them looking really wonky.
Mm.
Yeah, it was so helpful to like actually have that feature, like, cause like I have like a line bias where like my lines would like on paper like they would lean to the left, so like I would be drawing my characters and like I'd flip the page upside down and realize that everything is warped a little bit.
Right.
I'd be like,
yeah.
So that really helped me fix that problem, like having that feature.
Yeah, that's kind of like the most comfortable way to draw like this kind of faces is always have them facing to the left for me.
Yeah, like 3/4 is so much easier because you can actually feel your way through like the 3D form. It's more of like a structure, but from the front, everything's kind of flattened, so it's harder to get that going. So yeah, I'm the same way. Like I much prefer to do a 3/4 head than try to do one that's like front on. Like it's so tricky.
Yeah. It also makes the face more interesting, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Gives you a better sense of, the volume of it.
Right.
Yeah, you were able to get this to read so fast. Like that is just awesome. Like it already has like a sense to where like I feel like I could almost like wrap my hand around it like a stone statue almost, like so quickly too. So is the circle back there, is that like a shield or is that just like ornamental, I guess, at this stage?
Yeah, ornamental, I guess. Just something. Just not to have a blank orc.
Visual interest. Yeah.
Just like a little graphic design in there to set them off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Trying to be fancy.
Yeah.
That looks good. Are you just like fleshing out the subtler forms now?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, once you have the basic values down, it's then it starts to get interesting. Really push like the parts that whatever.
Yeah, I guess once you get like the actual structure in place and you're not worrying about is the pupils aligned, you just kind of have fun and feel comfortable about it.
Right.
I can definitely see a lot of the Pixar lore kind of coming through for like,
Really?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like it actually, like, I mean, it's not Pixar, but it reminded me actually a little bit about a Space Jam. Those like,
oh yeah,
creatures like get huge. Like it looks a lot like that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, now that you said that, like it's like I can see it.
It's almost exact. It's like it's just like the.
Yeah,
That's
totally.
really awesome that you kind of took those like influences and kind of channeled them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
it's
was like a favorite kids movie of mine.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it's definitely like that with like a little bit of like Blizzard's like kind of blockiness. Like it still has a little bit of that like blocky structure that they kind of like.
So that's one thing that we actually don't hear too much about that I hear on occasion in a podcast is like when you started working for like a company like that, like you got a style guide, right?
Well, like for the specific illustration that I did for the trailer, I didn't have that actually.
Alright guys, I am going to get out of here for a couple hours. But thank you for watching. You can find me anywhere under Shotgun Scream. And I'm going to continue working on this guy later on tonight. So definitely come back and we'll get back to work. And again, this Wednesday, Zbrush Hangout, we have a show with Sean Bellinger. He's an art lead over there at 6 Foot over in Houston, Texas. He's going to be on the show, and we're going to be working and having fun. And the next week we have another guest that all of you know. So definitely look out for that announcement. But again, go to the ZB Ho Club on Facebook. Go to ZBrush Hangout on Facebook. And definitely like those pages. And then my studio, Dev Panic Studios. And then you can find me anywhere under Shotgun Scream. So thanks a lot, guys. I'll be back.